This next position is going to be a breakout from some of our previous movements in the oblique high sitting position, where we're going to look at some movements that help stretch or mobilize this lateral aspect of the hip while engaging this muscle in somewhat of a lengthened position, also working with a little bit of thoracic rotation and scapular stability with some reaching. So we're going to go right to this side sitting position. And a couple important points is that pressure on my hand, I'm going to try and keep my fingers spread and making sure that my shoulder is not going towards my ear. So I have a little bit of this pressure down. And I take this point of my elbow and I try and suck the back of my elbow into my armpit a little bit to create this tension in my armpit. My leg setup is going to be my front leg coming up towards this 90-degree position. If this creates any pinching in the hip or groin, you can try and lower this leg down a little bit. I want to try and keep my knee flexed around 90 degrees. I don't want to bend it in here real tight. So ideally I would be up at this 90-90, but if there's any pressure in the groin or front of the hip, you can lower down. My back leg is extended. Same thing around a neutral with about 90 degrees of knee bend. So in this position with the pressure down into my hand, I'm going to take my top arm and I'm going to start to reach in this rotation and forward position. And as I do that, I go from the weight being on my hip to transferring that weight towards my knee. And as I push that knee into the floor as I reach, I feel a nice stretch into this lateral posterior aspect of my hip. So I go from weight on my hip to, as I reach forward, that weight going to the outside of my knee. I'm pressing that knee into the ground and I'm starting to turn my chest towards the floor to some extent. And as I do that, I'm loading more tension into that hip. And I reach, and I'm going to come back and reach the opposite way as my head follows my hand. An important point with the shoulder is I don't let this collapse forward, but I keep that sucked back as I rotate. So right there is about where I'm going to stop. If I wanted to continue, I could let that shoulder dip as I go around. Okay? So I want to keep that good shoulder position, and then I'll come back around the front, loading once again that outside of my knee as I reach, pressing this knee into the floor to feel that tension in my hip. Feels really good actually. And then coming back around, keeping this supporting arm squeezing into my shoulder blade as I rotate. I would try for somewhere in the 5 to 15 repetitions on one side. And then we'll rotate to the other side in a similar fashion as we've done before. I'll come to the sitting position. And then just so you can see from the back side the same movement, I'm going to take my hand to the floor. I'm going to bring my top leg into this extended position with my knee flexed around 90 degrees. My top leg is up in front with my knee also flexed around 90 degrees. Once again, if this pinches in my hip, I can lower down slightly. Same shoulder blade squeezing down and back as I start to reach around and load this bottom knee as I press it into the floor to feel that tension into my hip. Pause for a couple seconds. Keep this arm not rotating upward but pressing down and elbow pinched into my side as I rotate back around. Same thing 5 to 15 times, going slowly through this rotational reaching sequence.